Joining me on the air is Heidi St. John, who is one of the Republicans running to replace the person I consider a rhino Republican, and that is Jamie Herrera Butler. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, Lars, I've been looking forward to it. Thank you for having me back.
Glad to have you back. I want to ask you something. Are you willing to engage in a debate? If we set up a debate and clear either an hour or an hour and a half, are you willing to come on and do a debate? Because I had proposed that a couple of weeks ago to one of your opponents, and he said yes. So I want to know if you're willing to do it as well.
Oh yeah, I'm totally willing. I'd love to do that. I believe there's been some. I haven't seen the latest on it, but I believe there was some back and forth. We said yesterday that I want to come. I want to do it in person, no notes, no phones. You know, eyeball to eyeball. There are a lot of things to discuss. I think I said I'd be willing to do it for up to an hour and a half. So yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Fair enough. Let's make that happen. Okay, next, what are the issues that are resonating for you? And what would you like to tell people about Jamie Herrera Butler and about Joe Kent, your other opponents in this race, about who would make the best member of Congress?
Yeah, well, my big thing is less government. These are the issues, right? Do we want the government to have more control or less control over our lives? And you were just talking about what's going on in Multnomah County, right? That's an issue where the government wants to control everything. And in Multnomah County, in Oregon in particular, and we're sure going to see it in Washington State, is these guys want to come in the name of environmentalism or whatever else it is, and they want to take control over the lives of individual citizens. My big thing is freedom. I believe in limited government. I believe in freedom. I was thinking about the other day that Ronald Reagan in 1964 said this is a time for choosing. And we have major policies ahead that are in front of us, and I have a very different idea of government than my opponents do. And so one of my problems with Jamie, for example, is that she's been supporting things like CRT. She votes with Nancy Pelosi over and over and over again. She got an S from the Conservative Review. I've been watching her for a long time. And my main problem with Joe Kent is his left-wing past. 6 months ago, we didn't know about it, and now we do. And it's up to Southwest Washington voters to make sure that we don't reelect the rhino, Jamie Herrera Butler, or replace her with a Bernie bro from Portland. And that's who Joe Kent is.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you, because, we've litigated that other issue to a considerable degree, and I think I know where you stand, you know where I stand, and I know where Joe Kent stands. Tell me this. What would you get rid of in the way of government at the federal level? That's where Congress does its operations. What would you get rid of in our increasingly, dominant, in a bad way, federal government?
One of the things that I've been working at for a long time here, and Lars, I got to thinking, I looked for an email that I sent you years and years ago, inviting you to come here and see what we were doing in Clark County to help give parents options. I would like to see the federal government back in its proper jurisdiction. Every Sunday night from 5 to 6:30, I'm teaching a class here called Constitution Alive. We were just talking about the role of federal government, the main word being jurisdiction. And the Congress is wildly outside of its jurisdiction. It started off, the Founding Fathers gave them a very limited scope, right? We're supposed to make sure that there's interstate commerce, protect the national defense, right? Fund the military, make sure that our borders are secure. Well, we're not doing those things, but we are putting our money and our funding from the Congress into things like studying the effects of climate change on pregnant women. But Congress is out of control. I would be in huge favor of a balanced budget amendment. I am a business owner. I own 3 businesses. And I can tell you right now that if Heidi St. John raised the debt ceiling on my business year after year after year, I would go bankrupt. Well, guess what? That's where the nation is. We are on the verge right now of bankruptcy. We've got so many issues, largely because we are dealing with people in the House of Representatives right now who are socialists and Marxists at their best. It comes back to, what do we want in this country? Do we want more government? Or do we want smaller government? I am in favor of smaller government.
Well, I, like you, run a small business, and I'd love to have half a dozen producers. I could put them to work, but I have to pay them out of my own pocket, which means that I have to put a limit on it. And government never seems to have any kind of limits. But the reason I ask you about what would you get rid of, I mean, my list starts with the Department of Education, which primarily hands out grants left and right. If we got rid of the Department of Education next year, in the next 10 years after that, we'd save $1 trillion. I'd get rid of the Department of Commerce. I don't think we need a Commerce Department. There are some regulations and rules and all, but I think we could get rid of much of that. The Department of Energy doesn't really seem to serve a purpose. There's a big, long list of federal agencies that I would get rid of altogether or substantially cut them down. I just wondered if
Yeah.
you had some similar ideas and are willing to say, let's get rid of some of these things.
Oh, absolutely. I'm 100% in favor of getting rid of the Department of Education. I've been talking about this for a long time, and you know what you're just saying reminds me of the Constitution. Let's take it back to the Constitution. I am for limited government. This is the original intent of our founding fathers in the first place. And all of those things that you just mentioned, those departments you mentioned, we don't need them. Why aren't we giving more of the control of these issues to the states where they belong? And then the people in the states have greater control because there's not this big conglomerate of people making decisions for the citizens in Washington state who have very little understanding of the issues that are affecting us here. We could do a much better job if we take the control away from the federal government and return it again to the states. And so I agree with you. I don't know that I would get rid of the Department of Commerce, but I definitely think we can shrink it quite a bit. We could save so much money just by pulling these guys back and putting the Congress back in its proper jurisdiction so that this doesn't continue to happen. Because every year these things just grow. They grow and they grow and they grow. And now here we are. We've got to send people to represent us who want to limit the scope of the federal government.
Well, and EPA, I think most of the states have their own local version of the EPA, Department of Ecology in Washington State, DEQ or EQC in the state of Oregon. If you've got those local state agencies, yes, there might be a role for the federal government because pollution does go across state lines and political boundaries, but I'd trim an awful lot of the EPA down very, very severely. So, you want to tell people where to find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me at HeidiSt.JohnForCongress.com.
Very good. Heidi, thank you very much. I'll look forward to that debate because we're going to set it up. Back in just